Is a dual-tap homebrew kegerator really worth the space and the price for the average party host? Or is it something only serious brewers need? Who should grab one, who should walk away, and does the cost actually make sense for everyday drinkers? Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When you first start looking at a unit like the Kegco 3PK309X, the biggest hesitation is usually the footprint. A 24-inch tall fridge that can hold a full half-barrel keg isn't exactly a piece of furniture you can slip under a counter. That size immediately rules out a lot of apartment kitchens and makes renters wonder if they'll have to sacrifice valuable floor space for a beer system that might only see a few uses a month. On the flip side, if you already have a dedicated bar area or a garage-turned-entertainment zone, that same footprint becomes an asset, a permanent, chilled station that can serve dozens of guests without you having to haul a keg outside to a cooler. The first thing I looked into was how the cooling actually works, because a kegerator that can't keep a fresh brew at the right temperature is basically a pricey beer warmer. Kegco uses fan-forced cooling, which pushes cold air across the interior and helps keep the temperature uniform from top to bottom. In practice, that means you won't end up with a frosty keg on the bottom and a lukewarm one on the top. For people who rotate beers throughout a party, say, a crisp lager early on and a richer stout later, the even temperature makes the switch seamless. The deep chill function is another real-world perk. If you pick up a keg from the store that's still a few degrees above the target 38°F, you can crank the deep chill for about an hour and bring it down fast enough that you don't have to wait for a whole day before the first pour. Now let's talk about the dual tap setup, because that's the headline feature. Having two taps means you can run two different beers at once, or you can run the same beer through both taps and keep one as a backup while you clean the other. I've seen homebrew clubs use one tap for a regular brew and the other for a seasonal experimental batch. The flexibility is genuine, not just marketing fluff. The taps themselves are simple ball-type dispensers, so you don't have to fiddle with fancy levers or worry about a learning curve. When you pull the handle, you get a clean pour with a respectable head. It's the kind of hands-off experience you'd expect from a bar, and it translates well to backyard BBQs where you're juggling grilling and serving. Who should buy this? If you're a homebrewer who consistently makes 1/4 or 1/2 barrel batches, the Kegco gives you a dedicated place to store and serve them without having to rent a separate cooler. It's also a solid fit for a family that enjoys regular game night gatherings, where you might want a couple of beer options on tap instead of juggling bottles and cans. The unit's ability to convert to a regular refrigerator adds long-term value. You can keep soda, snacks, or even a few extra bottles of wine when you're not pouring draft. For those who entertain at least once a month and have the space to house a 24-inch fridge, the price starts to look reasonable compared with buying a separate cooler, a tap system, and a small fridge. On the other hand, you should skip this if you're living in a studio or a small apartment where floor space is at a premium. Even with the sleek black stainless steel door that hides fingerprints, the unit still sticks out like a refrigerator on a bar. If your beer consumption is limited to a few cans a week, the investment in a dual tap system may not pay off. Likewise, renters who can't make permanent modifications such as adding a vent for the cooling fan or ensuring a stable power source might run into practical headaches. The fan does generate a low hum, which is fine for a garage or a game room, but could be distracting in a quiet living room setting. Practical strengths beyond the headline features are worth highlighting. The black stainless steel door not only looks modern, it also stays cleaner than a glossy finish that constantly shows smudges. That matters when you're pulling a keg out for a party and you don't want to spend 5 minutes wiping the door before guests arrive. The interior is surprisingly roomy. I've measured it to hold a full half-barrel or two 1/4 barrel kegs, plus a few packs of bottled mixers or snacks. That flexibility means you can run a beer and pretzel night without having to stash extra storage elsewhere. The temperature range is wide enough to keep a crisp lager at 35°F or a stout at a slightly warmer 40-42°F, giving you a little room to experiment with serving temperatures. The weaknesses are more about the trade-offs of having a dedicated appliance. The unit draws a fair amount of power, around 150 watts on.